Hello, welcome to another edition of Trial by Magis with the Rechlin Skunkwerks report. In today's episode, we're returning to the land of the rising sun with the Mitsubishi A6M3 Experimental Testbed Fighter. Now, what we're looking at here is just a normal, typical A6M3 Model Zero fighter, with one exception. These guns right here, mounted just outside of the prop. Those are 30mm Type 2 experimental autocannons. Now, the reason that this right here was an experimental aircraft is because the early models of the A6 Zero, the M1 and M2 models, proved to be extremely successful against Allied air forces, Dutch aircraft in the East Indies, British and French aircraft in Indochina, and American aircraft in the Philippines and in Pearl Harbor. The Zero, however, did begin to experience difficulties when they encountered later production Allied aircraft that were tougher and more solidly built than the Zero, which was basically an aluminum frame covered in wax paper. That's not literally what it was, but the durability or lack thereof of the Zero is legendary. These things caught fire and fell apart if you sneezed at them the wrong way. So, to combat the tougher Allied aircraft that were making an appearance on the battlefield, the Japanese decided that instead of building a tougher fighter, they would just try to put bigger guns on it. So the experimental Zero with the 30mm was conceived. The A6M3 had already been put into mass production, so these experimental testbed fighters were put out to test the feasibility of putting the 30mm cannons on them. The tests were judged a failure, however, because the recoil of a 30mm cannon, which a German or American fighter has absolutely no problem absorbing, and you look at the Russian fighters and they have no problem handling a 37 or even 45mm cannon. The Zero's airframe proved to be just too light and flimsy to absorb the recoil of a 30mm cannon. Effectively, if a Zero armed with these guns was put into action, after a certain amount of combat hours and rounds had been fired from those guns, the entire airframe would have to be scrapped and a new aircraft and replaced with a new aircraft. So the project was put to an end, and the 30mm cannons were saved for later airframes that would be produced with a more robust construction. Now, in-game, the A6M3 handles just like any other Zero, if you are familiar with the Japanese Navy fighter line. They are low-altitude flyers, not very speedy, not very fast in the roll, but tier for tier, nothing can beat them at their ability to pitch. So, at a turn fight, nothing's king over the Zero. Combat-wise, that means that your choices on how you fight in this thing when flying it are rather limited. You're going to need to polish off and perfect your dodging maneuvers in order to avoid getting blasted apart by boom and zooming 109s, American fighters like the Mustang and P-40, or German heavies like the 110, the 210, and the 410. This being a Tier 5 fighter, it will see some pretty nasty aircraft. Now, fighting against this thing, you want to avoid its preferred altitude envelope at all costs. Just don't go down to low altitude. Drag these things up and force them to fight you on your terms, because if you go down there, it just saps you of energy and your ability to escape. And let me tell you, when one of these things gets in close, those 30mm cannons will punish you and will kill you before they overheat. Now, I took this thing out for one flight immediately after purchasing her. The following combat is that flight. It is a solo battle, and I hope you enjoy what this aircraft has to offer. Good hunting.
Target hit. Third enemy destroyed.